Sometimes there are simply good deals available, and so you can just tell yourself, today I choose comfort. Or so you think you can at least. Hi there and welcome to Cabo. I'm in an Uber heading to the airport to catch my first of 2 flights for today, which will both be in this video. Heading to Puerto Vallarta from Cabo, you would think, or at least I thought, would be a pretty easy day. Turns out there are no direct flights between the two. I suppose a lack of resort content creators needing to fly between the two might be the cause. Today we are at the Itty Bitty Terminal 1, which handles the domestic flights here at San Jose del Cabo International Airport. This varies ever so slightly by the time of the year, but my first flight today to Mexico City isn't even the most popular flight from here like you might expect. That distinction belongs to Phoenix and LA, which explains why Delta, United, and American are actually the most active carriers from Cabo. Aeromexico isn't even in the top 5. Before we get into all of that and get checked in though, let me welcome any of you that might be new to the channel. My name is Kevin. I'm here to give you a self-funded and honest look at some of the best, and some of the not so best, airlines and hotels in the world, which I've been bringing to you full-time for the past 4 years. Check out my hundreds of videos, scan the QR code, or click the link in the description to learn more about how I do things. First though, let's head inside. Based on the stats that I mentioned already, it's no surprise that the check-in area is pretty small for Aeromexico, which of course is properly pronounced Aeromexico, but let's not split hairs. My Clase Premier ticket, equivalent to domestic first in the US, was around $260. On Viva Aerobus or Volaris, the options would have been in the high 100s or low 200s, and that's before you add on all of the extra stuff, so this seemed like a very good choice at the time. It would have been nice though if Aeromexico didn't retime my flights like 10 times, eventually getting me to Puerto Vallarta nearly 7 hours later than what I booked. The terminal here is one large open space with a small lounge or two upstairs, and then the gates just sharing the same space. Aeromexico was founded in 1934 as Aeronaves de Mexico, with their first flight from Mexico City to Acapulco. Their beginnings were closely intertwined with Pan Am, who owned a 40% stake in the airline prior to it being nationalized. Currently, Aeromexico has the #1 spot for international market share in the country, and the #2 spot for domestic share, behind Volaris. There are 3 things that kind of define Aeromexico in the modern day. The first is their connection to Mexicana, the airline that is. In the mid-90s, the two airlines were merged but maintained separate brands. 10 years later, they split up, with Mexicana being sold off to Posadas Hotel Group and going belly up in 2010, only to be restarted by the Mexican military in 2023. I do love a good retro livery from time to time, but the key word here is good. Mexicana really did go from having one of the coolest looking ones out there to now having one that looks like it was spray painted on in a back alley somewhere. Anywho, the second thing is all about Delta. In 2015, Delta bought 49% of Aeromexico, and 2 years later they began a joint venture for flights between the US and Mexico, coordinating schedules and sharing profits. During COVID, Aeromexico filed for bankruptcy, and since then, Delta's share was reduced to 20%, but they're still clearly a major player when it comes to operational decisions. The third thing is all about the airports in Mexico City and the insane drama surrounding them, so I'll save that for the transit while we're there. Staff were very strict with carry-on baggage allowance, demanding that everyone in economy with a wheeled bag come up to the counter to measure it to have it tagged with a carry-on bag strap before boarding. Lots of people did do this, and after a bunch of them, they seemed to settle with those volunteers being enough. Boarding was called, and we had a nice leisurely walk to our awaiting 737 MAX 8. If you're enjoying the video and would like to support the channel, there are many ways that you can do so. A quick like on the video and subscription to the channel helps with the algorithm. You could join my YouTube channel memberships to get early access to some videos and access to all of my community posts. Or you could check out my Patreon where I post the most and can help you out with whatever travel related questions you might have. Whatever you do, thanks for doing it. I was greeted as I stepped on board and quickly recognized the seat. This is essentially the exact same seat model that I flew on American to Cabo, though Aeromexico's definitely has quite a bit more features. Headphones and a blanket were waiting at each seat. The biggest difference between these seats and those on American are the in-flight entertainment monitors. Legroom is generous, which is a good thing since the underseat space itself is fairly limited. There's also a very convenient storage space for lipstick, I guess, a pencil, mints. As well as another larger space for water bottles in front of the central divider. The safety video began and we pushed back, preparing for our short taxi to the runway. Some beautiful takeoff shots are coming up. The tray table has a built-in tablet holder, and luckily, if the person in front of you does recline, you're not going to be completely trapped. There's enough legroom to squeeze out. In-flight service leaves a little bit to be desired. If I understand correctly, all domestic Class A Premier flights include just the same snack basket and drink services. The in-flight entertainment was great though. The screen was really big for this setting and has a clear moving map and plenty of movies to choose from. I do love to fly. Obviously, I love to fly. But I will say that it was a little bit cruel to fly directly over Puerto Vallarta on the way to Mexico City just to fly back to Puerto Vallarta and get there 7 hours after I was originally planning to. Service on board was friendly, but to the point. I wasn't expecting anything life-changing, and I didn't receive anything life-changing. It's been quite a while since I landed in Mexico City, and I think I forgot just how unique the landscape is when nearing the airport, despite today's smog. We landed and parked in our rather tight quarters. Once we deplaned, we were stuck standing in the jet bridge for 15 minutes while the staff were trying to will the doors open. It would have been funny had that jet bridge not been a mild inferno. While we wait here, let me explain about this whole airport fiasco, or at least begin to. Of course, none of this is Aeromexico's fault, I'm not holding it against them, but it certainly does contribute to their growth at their primary hub, or perhaps lack thereof. Here's the airport, smack in the middle of the city. Way down tucked away over here is Terminal 2, which was opened in 2008 and is used nearly exclusively for Aeromexico. This was a case of, we really need to expand the airport, and there's no extra land, so let's just cram as many gates into a small area as possible. Finally, we were released into the airport. Funny thing is, never cooled down. It was staggering how hot it was in here. A totally dry heat, and the thing that was hard to believe from me was that it seemed like no one else even noticed. I'll show you exactly how hot it was when we're in the lounge. We're talking like night jet train service hot level. I headed to the lounge because of course at least the lounge is going to have AC, right? Yeah, no. I think it's a good time to mention that it was around 65 degrees outside this day. Not hot. The lounge was wildly crowded. There's space upstairs as well, accessed by a near-hidden staircase in the rear of the lounge. And here we are, a cool and refreshing 94 degrees. So, without getting political, let me try to explain an entirely political airport fiasco as quickly as I can. Years ago, the government was trying to decide whether to build a new mega airport, essentially right next to the existing one, and then close this one, or build a supplemental airport to the north of the city and keep both operational. They decided on the former. The new world-class mega airport in the making was designed by the same designers as Istanbul's new airport. The site was cleared. From the looks of it, they started to lay foundations, build structures, the whole 9 yards. Years of work. Small little problem. The existing airport is directly on the border between the Federal District of Mexico City and the State of Mexico. The new airport would see all of that lovely tax revenue go to the state instead of the city. And so 3 years into the active construction of the beautiful new airport, construction was halted, and the airport was simply not permitted to be built. Further, it was directed that the structures that were already built be destroyed and flooded and then turned into a park. All in all, this was a $16 billion whoopsie. To cope with the straining airport capacity, this new government decided to convert the Santa Lucia Air Base to the north of the city into a civilian airport, which opened in 2022. Another small little problem. It's up to a 2-hour drive from much of the city. The new airport also created conflicting air traffic patterns in the region, which contributed to Mexico losing its Category 1 status from the US FAA for some time. Terminal 2 has this new super narrow pier which has some of the most confusing gate setups that I've honestly ever seen. When you get to the gate, you need to walk upstairs and wait in a very small waiting area for your gate, and then when the boarding begins, you have to go back downstairs, get in line behind the queue, and do this whole zebra zigzag thing. By this point, it was pouring outside and we were a bit delayed, and my patients were wearing thin with the heat. Stepping on board the aircraft was probably the best moment of my day, since it actually had air conditioning. I'll be honest, I was kinda over it at this point. I chose the bulkhead just to show you how much legroom you'd get versus the other rows. For a longer flight, I'd pick the bulkhead, but for shorter flights where I wouldn't need to get out of my seat, I prefer the other rows. We pushed back, taxied, took off, had the same snack service, and then landed by moonlight. So I hope you enjoyed this double whammy trip report today. If you did, please be sure to click the like button and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss out on my twice weekly videos. I'll see you next time for my first ever triple whammy video, on my first ever same day purchase flight, on my first ever Southwest flight. There's a story here. Thanks as always for watching until the end.